Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. I'm Dan Allen and I'm joined by James Walker, and we've got a very exciting guest today, don't we, James?
We do, Dan, we do. I have hoovered up another friend of mine, Sam Wasson, who is, he's genuinely, I haven't been looking forward to a pod like this for a long time. He is one of nature's forces of nature. He's a great human being, and he is compendious about the world of film because he writes about filmmaking. And we haven't had that on the pod before, have we?
Yeah, we haven't. We haven't at all.
So, Sam has an amazing list of books. He's based in LA, and he has made his life about telling the story of the people and certain movies. So he has written books on Blake Edwards, who wrote the Pink Panther movies. Directed the Pink Panther movies. He has written a book about Audrey Hepburn, Breakfast at Tiffany's. He's written a book about Bob Fosse. He's written a book about Chinatown, the movie Chinatown, and Roman Polanski and the group of filmmakers around that. He's done an oral history of Hollywood fairly recently, and most recently he's got a book out about Francis Ford Coppola, which we can't wait to hear about. So, we've never had this point of view of someone who talks and writes about the movie world. So can't wait to hear what he's got to say.
So,
welcome to the podcast, Sam.
Hi.
In fact, can we start off and say, is it because you like being known as Sam, not Sammy? I would call you Sammy, but you professionally like Sam, right?
Professionally Sam, but Sammy is fine too. My friends call me Sammy, and so that's me.
Okay. Well,
Sam looks better on a jacket. That's why I'm Sam.
Yeah,
Sammy's too big. Yeah, Sammy's too big. They say in the book business it doesn't stack well. That's what they say. So I'm Sam on books. Sammy in restaurants.
Okay, this is great. So
we'll start. Starbucks ask for your name, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we'll start that again. So welcome to the Young Film Academy pod, Sam.
Thank you. Hi, James. Thank you.
So Sam, I have heard a rumor about you that we're going to open with.
It's true.
Yeah, there you go.
Go ahead.
The look of terror spreading across your face. Like, what have you ambushed me with here? No, so I've heard a rumor that you have watched a movie a day for your entire adult life. That's true or false?
It's almost true. I used to watch a movie a day, sometimes two, but I did a movie a day for most of my life up until the last few years.
Wow.
And I kept a record of it, and I wrote down the date, and I wrote down the movie, and I wrote down the number it was in my watching chronology. That's all I did.
Did you rate them? Or?
No, I didn't rate them. I just wanted to write it down because it actually was my way of keeping a journal of my life, because I would look back and I would see the movie, and sometimes it would spark a memory of who I was at that particular moment. And also, you forget what you've seen sometimes, and need to be reminded. Oh yeah, there was that movie over there. That did give me something. I haven't thought about that in a while, so it's good for my own imagination, creativity to keep a list. I stopped doing it. I don't know why. I just stopped doing it and then never got back into it. But it was a wonderful thing.
Was it a physical book? Did you have like the way you wrote in it, or was it a computery type?
It was a physical book. It was a physical book.
See,
it was a physical book.
What was that first evening like where you didn't watch a movie? Did it suddenly feel vacant and empty, or were you sort of busy enough that it went unnoticed?
I cannot remember what it was. It might, I think it had to do something. It probably had to do with being a professional and having a responsibility, having to earn a living, that made it harder to balance my movie watching with my socializing and my work life and my relaxation life. Because as I became a professional, movies became more of a job. Watching the movies, I know that might be hard for some people to think about. Oh my God, movies is a job. Watching a movie, how could that be a job? Well, it is a job, and it is fun too. But there gradually in my life came other things that were more relaxing, that weren't related to what I did for a living. I think that probably had something to do with it.
Well, because I remember I came to your house, I think, same house that you now live in LA, and you had this lovely little sort of kind of screening room, and it had one chair right in the middle, like just one. It was like but it's like a cinema chair, like a really like a recliner. I think it was a recliner, like almost like a cinema / old person's chair.
Yes,
it was one of those.
That's exactly what it was, and it was given to me from an old person of the cinema.
There you go.
Yeah, no, it was an ugly chair, and it was for maximum comfort, and I did not care what it looked like. I did not care who else was in that room. I've subsequently retired the chair and brought in a couch so other people can join me. But that was a glorious moment with that chair. I'm glad you remember that.
I do remember the chair. But I suppose that the point of that is that, you know, amongst a lot of people in the industry, they will refer to you as kind of your compendious knowledge of movies is kind of important to the work that you've gone on to do, right? I mean, you needed to watch all of those movies to write the books that you write.
Right. Well, you need to know history. I mean, I write film history, and so that is what it sounds like. You have to know the movies. You have to know the history of America, in my case, because I'm writing about Hollywood. You have to know the stories of the people who make the movies. So you have to see as much as possible, and then you have to see it again. Because the first time you watch a movie, it's very hard to stay emotionally involved and also to distance yourself and watch the movie critically. It's very hard to do that. In fact, it doesn't even, you know, it's not even a good idea to do that. It took me a while to learn. To distance yourself emotionally, you won't get the critical aspect of the movie if you're not in it emotionally. So it takes a lot of time to really see a movie inside and out. And then, of course, years go by and you have to do it all over again. So it's sort of like being on a hamster wheel, unfortunately, watching movies. And you always need to go, in my business, you always need to go back and look at it again.
Yeah. And so, you know, people have said many lovely things about you. They've said that you're a social historian. They've said that you're a film historian, a chronicler of Hollywood. For what it's worth, I'm going to throw my tuppenny's worth. I came up with, and probably someone's called you this before, highbrow Hollywood. You know, that's what you feel like to me, Sammy.
Oh, that's good.
So, and a force of nature, and
that's true too,
and very handsome, as
very
we can see
good
here.
looking.
Yes. The viewers won't see how handsome, but
it's an important part of writing.
On trust.
You should put that on the cover of your next book, rather than like New York Times bestseller. Just like very attractive author,
James. Yeah, James.
Yeah. So I suppose, you know, how do you position yourself in that kind of social historian, chronicler of Hollywood? Now, how would you describe what you do?
I think of myself as a Hollywood historian. I'm because really, if you want to talk about the history of French cinema, I know only just the most basic, or maybe more than that, but I would never publish on French cinema. I'm not as sophisticated, or English cinema, or, you know, my focus is really Hollywood. So I would say I'm a Hollywood historian. But part of that, when you're writing about movies, because movies are a popular medium, movies are made for a giant audience, you have to understand society. So I also am a social historian by virtue of being a Hollywood historian.
Got you. And I suppose, how did you know, at what point did you know that's what you wanted to write about particularly? Because I imagine in the beginning you were writing about lots of different things. Like, at what point did you really know that was the focus?
You know, I still don't know. I always loved movies. But it was never my plan to write Hollywood history or even write books. I knew that I loved writing, and I thought about writing movies, which I have from time to time. But the fact that my life would turn out this way, I could not have predicted. This was never my goal.
I was wondering whether there was sort of so you were saying there's sort of no specific moment that you decided to be a writer, but was there like a specific moment where you were like, I don't want to write films, I want to write about films? Or was there a duration where you were sort of doing both simultaneously before that occurred?
You know, what happens in your life is you have to hold close to your dreams, and at the same time, you have to be open to new opportunities. And what happened to me was I had an opportunity to write a book. My professor, my film professor in college, after I graduated, she said, "Why don't you write a book about film?" And it never occurred to me. And I was just graduating, and I thought, well, what an unusual thought. Maybe I could enjoy that. And I did that, and it turned into something that I kept doing. So it was never a decision that I made that I'm going to abandon screenwriting and I'm going to start writing film history. No, it was a door opened, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, and I walked through it.
Wow.
And that was A Splurge and the Kisser?
And that was A Splurge and the Kisser, which is about the director Blake Edwards, who directed The Pink Panther and Breakfast at Tiffany's and other good movies.
So I have a person. My dad is now dead, but when he was alive, we used to, as a kid, the Pink Panther movies was just like a thing.
Hilarious.
Hilarious. It just united the family. We just loved it. I mean, absolutely beautiful. And I suppose let's do that. When you wrote that first book, I suppose, what did you enjoy about that? If it was new to you at that stage, what made you kind of go, I could do this?
You get excited about an idea, about putting an idea into the world. I had an idea about why I thought Blake Edwards was great and important, and it was an idea that seemed original. I read the other books about Blake Edwards, I read the other articles about Blake Edwards, and nobody had taken this point of view about why this filmmaker was important, and so I got excited about that, and that was exciting. That was exciting.
Does that mean you felt you had something to say? Was that kind of, do you mean technically, thematically?
All of it. I specifically, Blake Edwards makes. He makes all kinds of movies, but what recurs throughout his movies is slapstick comedy. And I thought even slapstick we think of as a very unsophisticated form because anyone could laugh at it, and because it shows people being silly, so we think of it as dumb. But Blake Edwards used it in such an emotional way, in such a sophisticated way, that I wanted to write a book about how he sophisticated slapstick comedy. So it really was about Blake's style, his storytelling style, and I hope people think about I hope I help people think about slapstick in a different way.
But I suppose, because your voice is really quite unique, I think, in the way you write, how you write, the style you do it. And so did you almost find that style through that first book, or that the point of difference? Or was there someone you admired who was writing books a little like this before, who you were trying to emulate? How did you find that?
Well, I always feel like you should sound like yourself when you write. And maybe a little bit smarter, because you when you write, you have the time to pick the right word, which we don't necessarily do when we're having a spontaneous conversation.
Well, Dan does.
Dan does, of course. Everyone else everyone else is probably smarter on paper than they are in conversation, just a little bit. So, but you should do that, make yourself a little smarter, but at the same time still sound like yourself. And I don't know a lot of film books, or a lot of books, a lot of nonfiction in general, that have voice, that are written with voice. A lot of times people think nonfiction, well, I should eliminate the way I sound. So it's more like reading the newspaper than reading a work of literature.
Or a textbook or something.
Or a textbook or something, But I like reading literature for the same reason everyone else does, because I like writing. I like to read good writing. So it was very clear to me that I should be writing well. I should be writing what I should be trying to write good sentences and in my own voice, even though I was writing nonfiction.
But I think that's what strikes me actually about the cult of Sam, which there is to some extent. Yeah, I mean, but there is but it's about you actually have the boldness. And there's a lesson here to put yourself into that. You don't.
Yes.
You say, "I am the writer of these books," and it becomes about. It's obviously about the subject matter, but it is. You don't hide behind. You say, "It is me, and it's my view and my thing," and so people kind of bond and can get around you as a character and your voice, which is what people do with, as you say, with writers, in fiction.
Right. Why should it be any different? I could speculate. I think that there's a feeling that nonfiction has to be objective, but I don't agree, because I think objective becomes unemotional. And when something is not emotional, I don't see what the point of it is. So I'm wanting to share the emotion of it too.
So let's do a cinema analogy. Is the difference between a drone shot of the action and a close-up of your main character's emotions. That's the difference.
That's right. Although you could have an unemotional close-up and you could have an emotional drone shot. But I see your point. I mean, one is intimate and one is far away, and I want to be intimate.
Was that a hard style to sort of almost teach yourself? Because you mentioned that it was your professor that suggested that you write a book. And I imagine when you were writing more in an academic space as you were learning, there is an expectation that your essays, as it were, are a little bit more emotionless. Or had you already developed that voice and that style? Or was it something that you just went for and worked out what that would sound like and how you would write like that when it came to this book in particular? It's so true, and it's going to sound like I remember being in high school and writing essays that were in my own voice and not understanding why I had to be formal. Why couldn't I be just as smart and sound like me? Why do I have to erase the part of me that's me in order to write a reasonable essay? And also, I could point to other writers like Pauline Kael, the great film critic who I knew about as a film goer, who wrote the way she sounds. She writes literature in the form of film criticism in the form of literature. She writes literature in the form of film criticism. So I knew there were others out there. I didn't invent this. I didn't invent this concept, but I didn't understand why the pressure to flatten your voice.
But I think there's a huge note for young people here, right? Actually, whether it's in almost any industry, but certainly in writing, and which you do get that flattening at school, where someone kind of wants to make you fit in to score the marks or do the thing, because it must feel like what an essay feels like or piece of writing. And actually, I think finding your voice in whichever way you do that is about trusting to speak as yourself.
It doesn't make sense, especially because in literature classes, we're reading the great voices in the history of the world. Did Shakespeare flatten his voice? Did Jane Austen flatten her voice? Did Marcel Proust flatten his voice? No. The only reason these people exist. So something is going on there in the academy, in the curricula of the world, in the colleges and universities of the world, where students are told to sound a certain way. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Well, not at Young Film Academy, I can assure you that.
No.
We certainly, because we actually have this at our residential summer camp where we have 250 young people coming and making movies,
wonderful.
all living their and very much in the writing process. All the tutors will encourage them to really look at stories that they observe from their point of view on the world that are unique to them. It's not, don't try and sort of generalize, make it specific, make it something that meaningful to you. And, and we all know that thing, you find the universality in the specificity, right?
Yes.
As opposed to trying to go universal from the top, and you're like, you end up with nothing. But
That's right. Now with that, it doesn't mean be stubborn and resist the input of other people. That's not necessarily finding your own voice. Sometimes it is. Sometimes someone, in giving you feedback, is trying to flatten your voice, but sometimes they're not. And you have to be selective about who you listen to. And there's no rule for who's right or who's wrong. But the only stupid thing you can do in that context is not listen at all. You always have to be open and listen to what other people are saying, because it might make your voice stronger or louder. It might make you better. On the other hand, it might not.
So does that mean that you were sort of having to conform in sort of a college or a university system or format, and then you almost became unshackled the moment you could write a book, or were they encouraging? Did you eventually meet professors that were encouraging of you speaking in your style at that time?
My professor, my film professor, Janine Basinger, at Wesleyan University, which is where Sarah Shepard, who is on the podcast, also went, where I met Sarah. Janine Basinger is herself a writer, the greatest writer of film history. And she writes books in the same way. She sounds like herself. So I'm by no means the first person to do this in film. There's also, like I said, Pauline Kael, people I really look up to. But Janine was my professor, and she said, I've read everything. I don't want you to write sounding like Andrew Sarris. What's the point of that? I have Andrew Sarris. I don't want you to write sounding like me. What's the point? I'm already me. Write like you. Show me what you see in the way that you see it. There's no education. There's no education otherwise. So she was very instrumental in allowing me to, allowing all of us to have our own voice. And that is what she...
You've just written a book. You've just written a book with her, I think, haven't you?
I just wrote a book with her.
I saw this. Tell us about that.
That book is called Hollywood, the Oral History, and it's the story of Hollywood as told by the people who made it. We got a treasure trove of thousands of interviews from the American Film Institute with people going all the way back to the silent era through today. And Janine and I, who's now no longer my professor, she's now my friend, we listened to these interviews and cut them up and created a 700-page conversation that basically tells the story of the movie business, and it's told by the people who made it, which is what made us so excited about doing this, because this is the people who were there telling the story. It's not me looking back on it. It's a first-person account of the movie business.
And you have some amazing people: Steven Spielberg, Nora Ephron, John Williams, Jeff Goldblum, to name just a few. I mean, you have some amazing people talking. So were these people that you interviewed, or were you accessing interviews that they had already done?
The AFI, the American Film Institute, has been doing these interviews for 50 years. So we got their interviews that they conducted.
And when you're building a book of this sort of scale, does traditional things of like structure become less important because it's so big that it's almost like you stop taming the beast and you almost just let it be what it is as one sort of interview connects to another, or are you still trying to sort of fit things into certain sections and having to cut things out so that you don't spend too long in, say, the silent era and stuff like that?
We had to do both. We had to give it a structure so that it kept moving forward. But at the same time, we did want it to feel like a conversation. So we allowed for here and there a few digressions where it seemed to be either funny or illuminating. But no, we had to keep moving this story forward.
Yeah.
And when you write a book, Sam, and you choose if it's actually, let's do that. How do you choose a topic? I mean, you've chosen some amazing people to name a few. Obviously, you started with the Blake Edwards book. I think, have you released the Francis Ford Coppola book yet?
Yeah, that just came out last week, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Plug it to thousands of young people listening.
Well, this is actually, it's a book about not waiting for... It's about Francis Ford Coppola, the filmmaker, the director of The Godfather, and it's about not waiting for permission to make your movie. A lot of people in all over the world think that they're going to wait for someone to come and write them a check for a lot of money, because making movies can be expensive. And once they get that check, then they're going to make their movie. No, actually. That money comes, that check comes after you've done it yourself on your own. You have to go out there and find a way to do it and not make excuses. And then once you make the movie, then you can show it to people. You can say, look, I can do it. And then maybe they'll invest in you. But Francis Ford Coppola, that's how he started. He went out and he's got his friends together. He wrote a script. He got his friends together and he made a movie on his own time and with his own money. And that's part of what the book is about.
That chimes with what we say at Young Film Academy. I mean, that could not be more our message.
We didn't rehearse that.
We didn't even rehearse that. But honestly, that is the message that we put. We have a few phrases that we use. One is just find a way. You've just got to find a way. There's no one set path. You've got to find a way. And then we also have the cavalry is not coming, which was not ours originally.
Wow.
The cavalry is not coming. And especially even if you have one success, that doesn't mean that suddenly you're made and done. It's going to be a continued struggle, and you've got to go out there and do, whether it's you're making El Mariachi or you're making Reservoir Dogs or whatever those starting points were for filmmakers who just went out with their friends basically at the weekend with a camera, did the best they could with limited resources, but showed what they could do. That you've got to put the energy into it. You can't, as you rightly say, sit on the back foot.
And you can't make excuses, especially because if you look back at film history and you see how hard it used to be to make a movie with all the technology and all the equipment, it was so hard to find a camera. People didn't have cameras on their phone. They didn't have video editing technology on their computer. It was literally for some people impossible, unless you knew the right people or lived in the right place to make a movie. But now anyone can do it. If you have a phone and if you have a computer, you can make a movie. So there really are no excuses. If Quentin Tarantino did it, you can do it. It's easier now for you to do it than it was for Tarantino when he first started.
100%.
Yeah.
We do find that there still needs craft. Young people they have the means to some extent, to go out and do, but they still need to understand how to create stories, how to actually technically, compose and break things down, all that stuff that is a little harder, and that's what we try and teach.
That's true too.
But can I ask you? So obviously, you've written the book on Coppola, which I can't wait to read, and in terms of adventure stories about filmmaking, Apocalypse Now. Which for many of our younger listeners, they may not be familiar with this movie. So can you just give us a bit of a sense of what that movie was? And I suppose you must have a compendious knowledge of the making of that movie. I'd love to hear some of your stories on that.
Well, a lot of the book is about Apocalypse Now, because even though it was a multi-million-dollar war movie, Francis Coppola still made it the way that he worked as a young filmmaker, not worrying about how he was going to find money, not worrying about if he needed to do a rewrite or not. He was always changing what the movie was, even when he was making it, and never making excuses and doing exactly what it was he wanted to do. And it was not easy. And there's a great movie about this called Hearts of Darkness, about the making of Apocalypse Now, which every young filmmaker should see. And it shows you how hard it was for Francis to make a movie on his own terms, even when he didn't know what those terms were.
And on location in the jungle.
And on location in the jungle.
With Dennis Hopper.
With Dennis Hopper. And typhoons and actors getting sick and the money running out and his marriage falling apart. But he still did it. It takes an incredible amount of resolve to be able to lead, to direct a movie. And the story of Apocalypse demonstrates that probably better than any other film production ever.
Yeah, the documentary about the making goes up with Lost in La Mancha as one of those films about the making of a film that is more gripping almost than the film itself. And it's just like, and you look at the madness of that. I mean, and that set where it was. How long were they on that set? It was a long shoot, that wasn't it?
It ended up being over a year. If you can imagine, they had to break and they were shut down and they came back, but. Yeah, it was over a year. But that screenplay was kicking around. They started shooting, I believe, in 1976, but they had been talking about that screenplay since the 60s. And the movie finally came out in 1979. So these things take a long time, and what keeps it together is passion and perseverance and will. And these are qualities that no one can teach you. You just have to work on. You just have to want it that badly.
My son is actually, his middle name is Marlon, after Marlon Brando.
Oh, my God.
And it was in part because my wife and I listened to the documentary Listen to Me, Marlon, which is voiced by Marlon Brando, who did these tapes. He used to sort of talk into a dictaphone like a journal. And the entire documentary, you should check it out, is his life, but voiced by himself via these tapes that they found after his death. And there were some amazing stories of Brando on that set. Give us a little flavour of Brando on the Apocalypse Now set.
Well, Brando arrived very overweight, which poses problems for the filmmaker. How are you going to shoot this guy who doesn't look like the guy that you hired? Brando was an improviser, and so was Francis Ford Coppola. So they're rewriting the script together sometimes while the rest of the crew is waiting, which costs a lot of money because you have to pay people for their time. So if you're not shooting and you're rewriting, you're spending a lot of money and nothing's getting shot. But that's how much Francis Coppola wanted the script to be right and wanted Brando to be happy, that he was willing to wait and wait and wait and pay for it until he got it right.
And they had to do it. Obviously, they shot Brando super tight, right? It's a very close up.
That was one of the solutions, and in the shadows,
but it makes exactly in the shadows. But it makes it right. I mean, it's one of those things. Looking back on it, that it wouldn't have been the same if that's what's so classic about it.
Yeah, and that's part of what creativity is solving problems. And when you are a filmmaker, you often have to solve problems fast. And the way to do that is to trust your instinct. And again, that takes us back to voice. And you want to surround yourself with people who respect your instinct, but at the same time, are there to challenge your instinct if maybe they have a better idea.
And so how do you go through, looking at, as I say, we got sort of a bit hijacked by that story, but, you've written some amazing books on loads of topics, but obviously there's lots of topics you haven't yet written books on. So how do you choose the ones you have? Like, what makes you go, I want to do, Breakfast at Tiffany's, or I want to do the Francis Ford Coppola or Fosse, which we can come to talk to, why these and not others?
Well, I look at, first of all, I have to love the filmmaker or the film. And secondly, I look at my bookshelf, or I go to the library and I see is there a book on this that I like? Or if I wrote a book, would it be redundant? Does there need to be a book about this? And if I see, God, there's really no book on this that I really like, then I'll go to my editor and I'll talk to him and I'll say, I love this movie. No one's done a good book about it. Or I love this director. No one's done a good book about it. What do you think? Is this something there's an appetite for in the public? Do you think there could be an audience for this? And if he says yes, then we have a potential book. But he might say no. He might say no one cares, or only you care about this. Try again. Try again.
Which kind of brings me to the question about audience, because I suppose because I mean that is a danger, right?
Yes.
Did you have that slightly with Fosse? Do you want to explain you wrote the most beautiful book on Fosse, and do you want to explain a little bit who he is for some of our listeners who may not know? And was that one of those times where someone sort of originally went, hold on a second, I'm not sure this is going to fly, or not?
Yeah, I love the filmmaker Bob Fosse, and he's a director and a choreographer. One of the most talented people of the century in entertainment, the last century. And there were biographies of Bob Fosse, but I didn't like them. And so I went to my editor, and this was a different editor, and she said, I don't think anyone cares. And I took that very seriously, and I thought, wow, maybe no one cares. And my agent, I have an editor and I have an agent. My agent said, I think she's wrong. I think people do care. I think we need to find you a new editor. So with my agent's guidance, we found a new editor who did care and did disagree with the previous editor and thought, you know what? People don't know enough about Fosse, but when they find out, they're going to love what they know. They're going to love this. And so he took the chance. That editor took the chance. And you know what? He ended up being right, because of all of my books, that's the only one that was adapted into a television series.
That's right. I was going to ask about this. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
It shows you that first editor was wrong. Now, they're not always wrong. Sometimes it's true that they people won't care. So
okay,
again,
give us quickly. Give us what have you said that's got the "we don't care" treatment that you've gone. Yeah, right.
I wanted to write a book about the actress Carole Lombard, who is a worthy actress and a worthy subject, but people kept telling me, I heard it enough from enough smart people where I thought, I think I won't do this, and also if I wanted to do it enough,
sorry, Carole,
you might. Yeah. You might say, it doesn't matter what people say, I'm going to do it anyway. But you're always making these value judgments. How badly do I want to do this?
Because it takes time. How long does it take you to write a book?
3 years. 3 years.
It's like making a movie, Sam.
It's like making a movie, except you do it alone.
Is that 2 years of writing and then like a year of reworking? Or are you at the third way point by the end of the first year, 2/3 in at the end of the second year?
It tends to break
I imagine
down.
It's different every time, right? But
no, it's pretty much a year of research, a year of writing, a year of revision. It's pretty much like that if you do it full time. If you do it, a lot of people say, oh, I've been working on this book for 20 years. Well, they're not doing it every day. They're not, if you do it every day, it should take, if you end up with 300, 400, 500 page book, it should take about 3 to 4 years.
Interesting. So with the research part, how do you know when you've done enough research and you're ready to go? Or are you always sort of chomping at the bit by the end? You already feel like you've got enough and you're still getting a little bit more, so you're just waiting for that jumping off point? Or do you generally sort of know and then you just crack on?
It's such a judgment call, because there's always more to learn. But at a certain point, you start to feel like you're answering the important questions yourself, and that what you do have to learn becomes less and less important. You say, you know what, my time could be better spent writing, because I know so much And you think, well, I can always go back and ask a few questions here and there when I need them. But when you're answering for yourself the big questions, now that brings up the question, what are the big questions? and
that's the even bigger question.
That's the even bigger question. And part of doing research is asking yourself, what are the questions I need to be asking myself? So you need to find out what the questions are, and then you need to answer them. And once you've found that you've pretty much answered them, you can start writing.
I had a fascinating note on research because I used to find when I was writing screenplays that were based on historical stuff, I would just tell myself I was working, and I just avoid doing the hard bit of actually writing by just researching. It was great fun. I did it at some cool places, and people would occasionally fund me to do the research. And I realized I was just putting off. I was basically procrastinating with the actual act. And I found myself at the Hay Festival, which is a literary festival in England, and there was Peter Morgan, the screenwriter, who's he wrote the Crown, which people may be familiar with about the royal family, and various others. And people asked him, I think he'd just come out with the movie The Queen, and people asked him about his research process, and he was brilliant. He said, well, how it works is I write from day one, and then I do the research. And everyone sort of went, what do you mean? And he goes, because what I found is if I research first, then I only write the story that I think the research allows. But he said, if I write the story I want to write, and then I go and work out from the research why my story couldn't have happened. And basically that's the way he does it.
That's fascinating. And I should say there's a slight difference there between what he does and what I do, because he is writing a historical fiction. It's based on real people and events, but there's a certain amount of speculation of imagining that goes on in these things. So he has the luxury to go story first. I have to tell the truth, be factual. He has to be true to a spirit. I have to be true to the facts as I see them. So I have to research first. But what he's saying is a great lesson for screenwriters who don't have to be factual, but they have to be true to a spirit.
I was imagining a non-fiction book now that is true to the spirit and full of made up nonsense. And I was reminded that there was that biopic of who was the guy? Weird Al Yankovic. And they did a biopic of his life, and that was completely... it was in the spirit. But,
in the spirit, right.
Including, was it the Cartel versus Madonna, or Madonna got involved? The whole thing is absurd. But I wonder, when your book got turned into a TV series, was there an element of additional elements being put in? And were you involved in that process, or did you just get to sit back and then just see the finished result? How did that sort of play out?
What happens is they buy the rights.
Who was they in this?
They in this case was Fox. I think it was FX was the network. And they came to me and they said, we'll give you money if we can do a series based on your book. And I said, great. And I got the money, and then they went ahead and they made the series. So I had nothing to do with it. And in some cases, the series had nothing to do with what I wrote. And that really pissed me off. But they were within their rights to do it. That was what they bought in giving me the money. They got the right to do whatever they wanted. Now, maybe they thought they were being true to the spirit of what I wrote. In many cases they were. In many cases I don't think they were. But people disagree about these things.
Did you watch all of it? And so were you episode by episode sort of hoping it doesn't go too far in one direction, or you just sort of saw bits and pieces? Or
I watched as much as I could take. I watched as much as I could take. And I would at some point like to go back now that I'm a little cooler. I mean, emotionally cooler. And have another look. But it's very hard for a writer of a book to love the movie that they make about the book. It happens sometimes, but other times, you've spent so much time thinking about this story, you believe so strongly in the certain decisions that you made. And when you see them changed, you think, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's like, you decorate your house. You put a table here, you put chairs here. Somebody comes in and they say, well, that table should be in the other room. And you say, no, it should. The table is exactly where it belongs. But people see things differently.
And I suppose what's interesting about this with that character is that you've written your version of Bob Fosse, the character, and you have that really sort of clearly in your mind who he was, what he was about. Right. And then, but what's different about fiction is that it's not that you've created that character just from the mind of Sam. This is right. Your view. And then they come and they give their view of that same person based on your view of that person.
That's exactly right. Right.
It's crazy. It's like mirrors and mirrors.
It's mirrors and mirrors. Yeah, it's mirrors and mirrors. But that's why there are so many biographies of a single subject. I mean, you look at Winston Churchill, for instance, you look at the Queen of England, you'll see so many biographies. And many of them, even though they're not the same, are valid because each writer has a different point of view, even on nonfiction. We each have a different view. What is it that makes me, Sam Wasson, what is it that propels me? What is it that I want, for instance? Well, one person could say one thing after researching my life, and another person could say something else. What are the events, if you're going to tell the story of my life, what are the essential events of my life? You're not going to include everything.
I do know, Sam, that most of those happen at El Coyote, the restaurant.
That's true. Chapter 1, El Coyote.
Yeah. This is a Mexican restaurant in LA, by the way, that Sam and I have.
But when you do biography, and young people should know this, you can't include every episode from somebody's life. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So what are the important episodes? And now how you define what's important is different from how another writer defines what's important. And that's why there's so many ways to tell the story of somebody's life.
Do you ever find yourself sort of reading other people's takes on things? Does that inspire you to explore that particular aspect of someone that you admire's life? Or do you ever get drawn in maybe by the subject matter itself? Does that make sense? Like how much sort of other writers take on Hollywood and its characters that populate it sort of influences what you write?
Well, most of the time if I'm writing something, it's because I don't like what somebody else has written. I look and I say, oh my God, that book on Bob Fosse, that's not the guy. They got that totally wrong.
Yeah.
So to that extent, now if I look and I see they got it right, then I'll keep my mouth shut and I'll say, I don't need to write anything. It's already out there.
So we may have young people listening to this who have a passion for writing, who want to express themselves. And they're looking at the industry in large, and they're thinking, maybe I could write computer games, maybe I can write screenplays. And then they're listening to this and they're going, I like that guy. That guy, Sam, he sounds great. He's got a great life. And I want to write about movies. Mm-hmm. That's something I hadn't considered. Because it is different from film criticism. But actually, I think you've done...
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Can you just give us that... What's that difference? Like the life, as you see it, the life of film critic versus what you do? What's the difference? They both write about movies.
Well, a film critic will review a movie. And by review, I mean he's telling an audience what they would see he or she is telling an audience what the audience will see in a movie pretty soon after it comes out. A film critic he or she will report on a movie like covering the news. This is what you're going to see in this movie. It's got this star. It's by this director. Here's what you should know about a little bit about what the story is. What are some important stylistic aspects of the movie? They're giving you a little bit of the experience of the movie. What I do in biography is I tell the stories of the people who make the movies. I tell the stories of the people's lives and the process of making the movies. So I'm less concerned with the result of what's on the screen than a film critic is. A film critic also more concerned with aesthetics. Obviously, that's a part of what I do, because a filmmaker's aesthetics choices come from who they are. But my responsibility is who the filmmaker is and how that filmmaker came to be and what their story is. So mine's more personal about the artists, and a reviewer is talking more about the art.
Got you. So I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, that sounds right up my street. This is what I want to do with my life. So what does it mean day to day? Describe a day. How does it work when you're working on a book? What is life like?
You know, a writer's life is so great. I get to wake up when I want. I get to have my cup of coffee for as long as I want. And then I get to walk into my office and sit there all day and write. Now, not all of it is good writing. It's not like I'm writing perfect sentences all the time, so that gets very frustrating. I get very frustrated with myself. Oh, God. And it gets lonely because I can't turn to someone else and say, help me. Only one person writes a book.
You can, ChatGPT. You'd be fine.
You can't ChatGPT. You can't ChatGPT. I know there are people who write books in pairs. They're not good. In my mind, they're not good because voice is something you can't share. We talked about voice. Two people can't have the same voice. So you write books alone, unlike movies. And so I sit in there, and sitting by yourself is very hard because you don't have help. But it's also wonderful to be able to do exactly what you want to do. That part is the good part. And then I can make a phone call to a friend if I want to. I can go for a walk when I want to. No one's telling me. Go to work. What I definitely do is I sit in there all day. I sit in there all day until it gets dark out. Sometimes I'll be in there an hour earlier or an hour later, but pretty much it's around the time. It's about 10 o'clock to about 5 or 6 o'clock.
So you're not an early or a night bird. You hear about writers who want to just do everything.
I do it like a job. I'm going to work. It's not about whether I'm inspired to do it. No. This is not about inspiration. No. Your doctor doesn't go to the office when he or she is inspired to go to the... No. Your teacher doesn't go to work when he or she is inspired to teach. No. It's a job. Your responsibility is you go in every day, whether you are inspired or not. People ask me why I've written so many books. I say, well, it's my job. Why has my father, a doctor, treated so many patients? Because it's his job. So my attitude, you really have to have that attitude about it, that it is your job. You are doing this all day. Now, the virtue of being your own boss is that you can blur the lines a little bit about when exactly you are doing it. You can say, you know what, today I'm going to go in a little bit later, or I'm going to work a little bit shorter. But basically, you're in there every day.
But see, that's self-discipline. You know, that's a big thing.
That's right.
I mean, that really is disciplined because, you know, when you are 6 months into that process and it's writing day, 210 or whatever is the thing, there must be a sense of, the discipline. Sometimes you just don't want to do it, right? You want to do something else.
No, I don't want to do it today. Today I don't want to do it. I want to have this conversation all day. This conversation is so fun. I want to have this conversation pretty much all day.
It's a special. Let's do a special.
I don't want to go in that room over there and sit and watch the cursor flick at me saying, come on, buddy. What are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Yeah, come on, try me. And I don't want to do that. But I want to have survived the day. I want to have the feeling at the end of the day that I did do it. Because I'll feel bad about myself if I don't go to work. And I will feel like a loser.
I have a friend who's a writer, and he kind of had quite strictly. He must have word limits. He said, "I'm going to write 3,000 words today."
You could do that too.
Is that what you do, or do you have a target?
No, I do it by time. If my butt is in the chair all day, I've been working. Now, some people do they word count. And if they feel that that's what's moving them forward, and at the end of the day they can feel good about themselves and they say, I hit my 1,000 words, then good for them. Or if they're a screenwriter and they say, I hit my 5 pages or I did my scene, if that's what makes them feel good.
I was going to ask,
Great.
with the you mentioned having written so many books, and you also mentioned earlier talking about you have it to really believe or have a passion for the topic that you're going to write on, because you might hear some no's and stuff. But obviously it is topics that interest you, or topics that maybe you saw that there was a gap in the market because no one had written a good book on a particular subject. So it feels quite almost that way of looking at it feels almost a bit random in terms of like, oh, I see a gap here. But obviously you do need to have that passion for what you want to write on. And I wonder...
Right. There are a lot of gaps, but you got to pick the one that speaks to you.
No. So I was just going to ask, do you see a through line looking back of things that maybe connect the artists that you have written about? Like, do you see that whilst, you saw a gap there, actually what really drew you to a series of people that you ended up writing about was a particular thing that made those people different, something that unified your subject matter in a way?
I think what I keep being drawn to is intense passion in an artist that is so intense that forces him or her to make sacrifices that maybe another person wouldn't make, that maybe pushes them into a madness or a despair that's frightening. And maybe from that madness and despair, they actually come out changed, deepened, better, with stronger work. So I'm really drawn to the passion of the artist. I'm really drawn to that drive and how it works within the Hollywood system. If it works within the Hollywood system. Does the system support that passion or hinder that passion? And how it affects the family, how the family affects the work. So I think those things keep coming up.
It's such an interesting question, Dan. And I think because I was just looking at your amazing sort of list of books, and I was just sort of trying to find a through line, but I think you found it, and it is that passion. And the book, The Big Goodbye, Chinatown and the Last Years of Hollywood, because Chinatown was a movie that actually I studied quite a lot at university. It was part of, I studied literature, but we started to talk about that movie within a literature context, and it was fantastic. And obviously Roman Polanski's become something of a controversial figure, but I imagine was driven by those same things that you were just talking about. What drew you particularly to that story?
I wanted to write about that period in film history, in Hollywood history, the period that we call the New Hollywood, between about 1968 and 1974 or 5. I wanted to write about that period, and I wanted to write about those filmmakers. Robert Evans, the producer, Roman Polanski, the director, Robert Towne, the writer, Jack Nicholson, the actor. And Chinatown became a great vehicle for me to do that. Just lo and behold, it just so happens that these filmmakers that I love worked on this one movie. So in that case, it wasn't the movie so much that I loved, but the people who made it and the era that it came out of.
Was that a fun book to do?
It was very painful to do because it was about filmmakers who were doing so much, who were so complicated, and making a movie that was about making a very sad movie. And so there was a lot of suffering in that movie, in that book, and I had to kind of live with that suffering. When you write about struggle, to get it right, you've got to think yourself about what these struggles are. Even when you write nonfiction, you have to, or I often am thinking a lot about the feelings of the people I'm writing about. And so in thinking about those feelings, you can take on that mood. and the mood of Chinatown and the people who made it was oftentimes not happy. So for me, it was hard. Now, writing about Coppola is much happier, and that's one of the reasons I took on that book after Chinatown, because I wanted to write about something that would feel good.
Well, because you live in that space, right? And that's what I found as a screenwriter, that you write if you write a horror or something, you actually live in that universe, day after day after day. Whereas if you write something that's quite uplifting, you live there. It can really affect your mental health. How have you found that?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So pick a world you really want to be in. I could never write a horror movie, nor would I want to write a horror movie. I pick a world you want to be in.
So good. And I suppose that leads me on to this idea of there must be something within the glamour of Hollywood, is it, or or maybe it's the antithesis of the glamour that really appeals to you? Is it the mechanics of how movies get made that keeps you coming back to this world again and again?
Well, I love many things about Hollywood, but what I love most of all, I would say, is that at its best, it's a system. It's the greatest system ever devised for making movies. And what that means is that Hollywood, at its best, draws together the most talented people with the best resources. It's like if you like sports, you probably like the Olympics, because that's where the best people in the world are coming together to show off their skills. And Hollywood is the center of the movie-making world because the best people come here. More of them. Now, that's not to say there aren't great filmmakers all over the world, but there are more great filmmakers anywhere in the world here in Hollywood. And by filmmakers, I don't just mean directors. I mean writers, I mean sound people, cameramen, producers. All of these people, they live here in this movie city. And I love that idea of a place where all the great people, so many great people are.
Dream Factory.
Dream Factory.
We have a moment at summer camp each year when we refer to, because a lot of young people actually, when you say the word Hollywood, there's, I think that a lot of people, it's one of those things they go, yeah, Hollywood. But actually, what is Hollywood? Well, Hollywood is a region of LA, right? I mean, it's a zone. It's also a sign, which is obviously the big one. But it's mainly we're really referring to the studio system, I think, when we talk about Hollywood. And then, a lot of young people go, what is the studio system? And I think you have to kind of go to those places in LA and do the tours that you can.
Absolutely.
And you just see it's a series of huge warehouses in a row with facilities and toilets and cafes where people can park. They've got office space and internet they can work. They've got props and costumes. They can build things in big warehouses, and they can all go there day after day and just make these incredible fictions happen. And we actually, because obviously in the UK we have big studios, but it certainly hasn't been in our DNA quite as much as Hollywood. And at Young Film Academy summer camp, we have this beautiful moment where on particular days we have up to 16 movies in production on a single day, and everyone's buzzing around from department to department, and it feels, we talk about like the backlot of one of those studios where you sort of come out and someone would be on a Western movie and they'd have their costume on and meet someone in a sci-fi and they'd have a chat about how the day's shoot was going. It's that real sense of being part of something that's just spitting out many stories.
That's right. And the community is a part of Hollywood too.
I was just going to say, I remember last time I was there, it does sort of strike you just all the different things that you need to make a film in a row. But you might even see like a theatre next to a bunch of studios, next to then a bunch of like prop houses and stuff, and it almost feels like a toy shop. Like the whole place almost has this like toy shop quality for storytellers.
That's
really,
exactly
really
right. That's exactly right. It's very special. So I love that idea, because out of the best toy shop in the world comes the best toys. And I think Hollywood has made the best movies ever made. My favorite movies tend to come from Hollywood because they are oftentimes the best. Now, it's not to say that there aren't great movies elsewhere, but I think in the history of the movies, you will see more great movies coming out of Hollywood than anywhere else in the world.
So we're going to take a trip back in time now, sir. And you can choose your time-traveling vehicle. What particular vehicle would you like to choose to go on this little journey?
Let me see. I would like to take I would like to go on a banana.
The time-traveling banana. Okay, hold on, everyone, because here we go. And we're going down the vortex, and we're traveling back in time on this banana. And we're going to see Sam as a teenager. And there you are, and you're going to be able to whisper something into teenage Sam's ear that he will know, but he won't know who told him. But it's going to be something that you feel would be an important bit of advice to tell you right yourself. What would it be? What would you say?
Don't try to figure out where you're going. Just try to figure out what feels good every day, and where you end up will be the right place because you did what you like to do every day.
That's beautiful.
That's great. That is beautiful. And it's that thing of almost not having the master plan, just go day by day.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because if you have a master plan, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But you don't want to have a plan and stay deaf to what life might be offering you that could end up being better. But you can't go wrong if you are doing what feels good to you or working towards doing what feels good to you every day.
And that's great advice. And before we wrap up, what's the next thing? What are you working on now? Can you tell us?
Well, right now, my Coppola book just came out, so I'm promoting that. It's a big time job. I'm going to New York and I'm going to do signings and I'm going to talk. So I don't really have a lot of writing time right now, but it's going to come time as the new year turns where I'm going to have to sit down and say, okay, I got to figure out the next thing.
So it's real boom bust socially, because it's basically like it's years of being in a room on your own, and then this short burst of publicity where you're suddenly glad-handing and shaking hands with many people.
It's boom bust. Tonight I'm doing a talk at a library, but it's such a great thing to be able to actually emerge, to boom from the bust or bust from the boom, and actually give this thing to people and shake people's hands and communicate what I've been talking about. That's a wonderful part of the job.
Is it a nice feeling to hold the actual book? Do you still get a rush when you actually get the book?
I sleep with it when it arrives. I put it on the pillow next to me and my hand is on. I'm so glad it's there.
Do you ever have like a nightmare where you wake up in the middle of the night and from a dream where the book wasn't finished, or it's sort of you're only just starting it again, and then you wake up and you see the book next to you and you're like, oh, thank goodness.
No, but I don't dream about writing, but I do dream about my subjects.
Interesting.
I definitely do dream about my subjects.
That feels like a good title for your personal autobiography at some point.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. Yeah.
I dream about my subjects.
Thank you, Sam.
I love it. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. You
guys are wonderful. I love all of the work that you're doing. I mean, and I loved this interview, and it's so important that young people know about film and the wonderful life that they could have in making films, whatever that means to them.
Or writing about the making of films.
Which is
another angle we've all learned today, and I've learned tons, as I always do. So thanks so much, man. Thanks for joining.
Thank you guys so much. I'm here if you need anything.
I love hearing about other writers' process, because I feel like every writer is slightly different. And I know sort of Stephen King, I believe, is sort of slightly similar to Sam in the sense I don't think he does word counts, but he'll write for a fixed amount of time. Although I think Stephen King finishes at 2 p.m. or something. He'll start sort of early-ish and then finish early, and then he just sort of goes and does stuff, which is why, and he does that all the time. I don't know how much promotion Stephen King does, but that's why he has a book out every sort of seemingly 3 months. But it's just really amazing to sort of hear about people's experiences and what their process is, because it is always a challenge, as you know, James, to just sit down and write something sometimes, and it's easy to derail yourself.
100%. Well, I think Sam's he's very modest, and but I mean he is a very well known figure in the world of Hollywood film because he is a chronicler of that world, and he has a unique voice. But amongst those who know him well, they know how hard he works. He just works, and he was really talking about that. He doesn't miss days. He just gets in there and he keeps going and he keeps going in a way that you or I or someone else might. As day 250, you're just like. I'm not going to do it. I mean, we say this at Young Film Academy, don't we? We talk to students about the joy of coming and doing a course with us is that at least they know they'll finish their film. They have to finish their film. Whereas when you make films for yourself, it's very easy to kind of let things slide. You get super excited, you write something, you start something, and then you lose interest. It's taking longer, it's harder than you think. And then it becomes one of those things you say, I once tried and I gave up and I never went back. But Sam has that discipline to just sit at that desk all day long with the winking cursor. I love it. Like, what do you got for me? Which I thought was brilliant. And I thought this is that analogy of people say you've written so many books. Well, people don't say to a doctor you've worked with so many patients because you expect 100%.
That. I don't know what was going through your head. I feel like I'm more of like probably a word count guy rather than like a 10 till 5. I almost like have a reward system inside, which is like, well, if you hit the amount of words you're meant to hit today sooner, then you're free for the rest of the day, sort of thing, and that sort of helps drive me. As I won't write rubbish because, and always, you're rewriting anyway. But for me, probably the word count is more of an appeal than the fixed time. I don't know. Are you more of a fixed time?
I was a bit more of a fixed timer, which has massive ups and downsides, and I think there's good things about both. I mean, I have a friend who writes novels, and he's a word count, but he's like, I've done the 2,000 words, and my always like, but are they good words? I mean. If they're bad words, it's more effort to unpick them later. But actually, having said that, I think that most writers, especially in films, it's in my experience, film scripts, is just that first draft, which we've discussed before. You've just got to keep going. Don't stop and polish. Don't look back. Just keep going, whatever rubbish it is, until you've got something that's a finished whole. Because you're going to rework it. So I think in those terms, actually doing that whole like page count or word count could be a really good thing because it just. You just got to keep going.
I like the phrase.
However bad you think it is.
Put one word in front of the other is what I like, and just that imagery of just keeping sort of walking the line and making that progress and stuff. And it was also like bizarre. It's just like I was also reminded of the filmmaking process as well, which yes, you working with more people than if you're just a writer, but there is that sort of almost ta-da moment where suddenly. There's screenings and there's like press and there's stuff like that. There's all those, the sharing of it suddenly becomes so much more interconnected than the actual making process. And it's sort of this miraculous ta-da before you then retreat back into the den or whatever sort of space you have to actually work on your things. I don't know. It's a weird sort of contrast, but it reminds you of why you do what you do and that there is an audience. And that's almost what you're making it for. You're making stuff to be seen, right? Especially if you're doing it professionally, then you kind of need it to be seen by people. Otherwise, you're going to struggle financially.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think what was really interesting as well was that sense of Sam always loved movies, but and people think that if you love movies, maybe you have to make movies. Well, you don't have to make movies. There's so many other jobs, many of whom we've spoken to on this pod, around the world of movies, whether it's Sam writing about movies, the history of movies, or whether it's financing movies, or, there's so many other ways you can be involved in the world. And Sam has just this deep passion for the world of movie making. Which is inspiring. When you get to hang out with him, as I've been privileged enough to do, he's so knowledgeable, and he has such compendious knowledge, both not just of the films themselves, but the people behind them and the context of them. And I think that's what's really interesting, because you and I both know when you make a movie, actually what you remember, weirdly, is not necessarily the shots in the movie. It's everything else that happened around it. And I think that's what Sam focuses on in his books, and is so fascinating. It's why the behind the scenes of movies are often more engaging than the movies themselves.
Yeah, No, I'm really. I still haven't seen. What's it called? What's the Into the Heart of Darkness or the Heart of Darkness? So I'm really excited to watch that. Hopefully in the next few days. Should be very inspiring.
I mean,
we have a question, James. This question's from Ed. Ed is 20. Ed says, "Do you have any recommendations for places that are effective to write in?" So I assume he means outside of the home, if the home's not an option. I mean, what instantly comes to mind, I know coffee shops is the stereotype, but I do quite like coffee shops, but I would always back it up with some headphones and just create your own space, which I would also say also applies like to your home as well. I found a good trick of you can find coffee shop ambience on like YouTube and stuff, and it's just this very monotonous sound of like chitter chatter going on in the background. And I would actually mix it, so I'd get the volume right on my coffee music, and then the volume right in my sort of Spotify playlist. So I sort of created my own ambience and my own world. But yeah, I didn't know if you have got any secret refuge points or tips.
I think that is such an interesting question, because I think I do have thoughts on that. I mean, the first is that tip you've just given, whether if you're at home and you're on your own, because writing on your own is a lonely process. I mean, it really is. And anyone can do it for a morning. Some can't do a day. Very few can do 6 months or 3 months. I mean, it's actually why, in some ways, writing film scripts, because they just are shorter. I mean, there's the old adage: if you're working on a script for more than 6 months, you should just walk away anyway. Just because you can't see the wood from the trees. It's not fresh anymore. And the classic things of sort of Sylvester Stallone writing Rocky in 2 weeks. There's a lot of people who've written things very quickly, which I've actually personally I think there's something in that. But to come back to it, if you're listening to coffee shop ambience, you've got that sense that you're not alone, I suppose. It kind of softens that. And my personal view of always that was, I think I always excused my bad writing or my lack of writing for my physical environment. I'd give myself excuses. Oh, it's the street outside. It's too noisy for me. It's my pet. I can hear someone in the room next door. If only I went to a quiet space. And you go to a quiet space and you're like, if only I could see a nice view. If only I had a view. That would inspire me. Hanif Qureshi, who's a famous sort of English writer and wrote novels and screenplays, and he famously said, my favourite writing room is at the bottom of a sort of an office at the bottom of a stairwell looking at the wall. And he was definitely the view, basically, like, just don't have a view, don't distract yourself. It needs to be it's almost like a cell, and that you can then pour onto the page. That's one way of doing it. Other people kind of want the sense of engagement and view, however you manifest that. Some people get fixated on the desk. Oh, if I just had the right desk, or in the end, none of it matters. The computer doesn't matter. Oh, if I had a better computer, I'd write better. If I had the right software, get a notebook. It is all, in my experience, all of those were just procrastinations to stop me from doing the thing. And I've
wasted time looking for an additional laptop just for writing. It's like the dumbest procrastination ever. When I'm looking on my laptop that works at laptops that maybe have a slightly different clunky sound to the keyboard, that I'm like, well, that would be very inspiring if I do that. But ultimately, you've just got to go. There's some really good tips as well of like, give yourself like 30 seconds just to bullet point what you're going to be doing when you do start, and that's really good at just getting you going. Other things you can do timed things of being like, okay, what can you write in 5 minutes? And then what generally happens is you've tricked your brain into writing for 5 minutes, but then you're in the flow, and then the moment you're in the flow, you just keep going.
That's a trick I've used, is 10 minutes, but to do it in 10-minute bursts, because it's very easy to think, oh God, I've got to write for hours. Well, just do 10 minutes. But once you start, you then, okay, hold on, I can do another 10. And it's that word by word thing, and you trick yourself. But to come back to the physical space, Ed, I think in the end, the answer is there is no answer, obviously, because everyone's different, but just don't let it distract you from doing the thing. That's all I'd say. And whatever you find works for you, maybe loads of different things work for you. I mean, the thing I would say is if you travel around, maybe you go to the Brontes, famous, writers, I went to their house up in Yorkshire, and you go and see, where Hemingway wrote, and you can go into these tours, and you say, I'm always struck by, you walk into just a room, and you sort of think it's going to be amazing and somehow different. And you always walk in and you go, oh, this is where Charles Dickens wrote, is it? Oh, it's just, It's just a room, and the place doesn't give you the thing. You bring the thing. The place is just it's an enabler.
Exactly.
In a good way.
Well, thank you very much, James. Thank you to Sam. Do go and read his book, The Path to Paradise, a Francis Ford Coppola story. It's out now on hardback, which is very exciting. I'm very excited to read it. And also to read more of his other books and stuff.
Yeah,
but
brilliant.
thank you for joining me as well. And we'll
Such
see you
a
guys
pleasure.
soon.
Thanks so much.
Take care.